Calling to order the July 12th meeting of the Metro Human Relations Commission. I see we have a quorum. Everybody has the copy of the minutes in front of you. Hopefully everybody's taken a look. We can take a couple of minutes if you need to review them, if you haven't already looked, and then we'll obtain a motion to approve.
And Chair, if I might, there was at least one correction, a typo that I received by email. Commissioner Safdie, her last name, that will be corrected in the final version.
Very good. Do we have a motion to approve with the amendment?
So moved.
Second?
A second.
I had a correction.
Sure, go ahead. Okay, so noted.
And if we didn't get a second, I'll now second.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second with the two corrections. Any other corrections, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, okay, good, we've got those approved. With two amendments. Financial update from our director.
Thank you, Chair. This month, I do not have the financial, the P&L. We are right at the end of the last fiscal year, beginning of the new fiscal year. And we haven't done or completed what's called true up from last fiscal year. And we still have the ability to perform some final transactions, for a week or so into the new fiscal year from the last one. All of that being said, anything I would have brought to you today would not necessarily have been completely reflective of sort of where we're at. I can say that, last meeting, there was some discussion about some funds that were remaining in our budget at the end of the fiscal year, and a desire to see those funds invested prior to the end of the fiscal year. We did make some significant, what I feel is some meaningful and significant investments in the office and in the community. We were able to purchase a new laptop for our interns, and we were able to provide a $6,500 co-sponsorship with some community organizations for eviction outreach and court watch, and I'll tell you more about that during the director's report.
Anybody have any questions? I do have one. Is our budget status quo under the new budget? Or?
Actually, it's not. I'm excited to say that we got an additional $20,000 investment in this budget in order to host paid interns. So, yay. And I'm very excited to say that our first two interns are here with us today, Gracie Rule and Rachel Novak. Thank you both very much. Rachel applied and really shone, and Gracie, we were lucky enough to have met Gracie in advance because she had been volunteering with PATH doing eviction outreach and court watch. So she's able to really hit the ground running with us because she had already been doing that work with PATH.
Mel, I just have a question, and I might have missed it as you were describing this. I know that there was a sizable chunk. Did it all get allocated, or is there some left over?
what is left over is some unspent payroll funds from the period of Sarah Imran leaving the policy and research position, and then our hiring Liz Orozco. So there was a period of time where there was some unspent payroll funds. So really, that's the only remaining funds. And we did, we also paid some other sponsorships that will come later in the fiscal year, right? So that provides us a little bit of savings for this next fiscal year because we, in essence, were able to pay some of those sponsorships in advance. That we have
Enough money.
budgeted for Just Conversations in this fiscal year.
Anyone else? Actually, I'd skipped over introduce guests in the agenda, so we'll let the two interns introduce yourselves briefly. Mel gave us a short introduction. Do you want to tell us a little more about yourselves?
I'm Rachel. I'm going to be going to Vanderbilt in the fall for community development and action. Sorry. And I'm originally from Eva Beach, Hawaii, so it's been a transition to Nashville, but I'm excited to get involved in the community and make some change.
And my name is Gracie. I am a rising second-year student in the same master's program at Vanderbilt. I've lived in Nashville for about 5 years and have been doing Court Watch with PATH, People's Alliance for Transit, Housing, and Employment, and I'm excited to see the other side, kind of in the government side of getting involved in community work, so.
Well, thank you and welcome aboard. Did we have any other guests that I missed? No? Okay. Old business, the open range payroll adjustment, where I sent the memo to HR. I do need to send the minutes because they had requested that, so. Go
And
ahead.
actually, if I might, Chair, I have an additional ask. Here's your ED coming hat in hand again. So lucky for Metro employees, the open range increase percentage, the maximum allowed, was raised to 4% after our last meeting. So I did provide the full 4% for my staff. And during our last meeting, you all approved a 3% open range increase for your executive director. But you now have the authority to provide an additional percent. And what kind of ED would I be if I wasn't gonna come here and ask nicely for it? So I'm hoping that you all will consider the additional percent increase.
I make a motion that we increase the executive director's salary, the maximum 4%.
I'll second only because you asked nicely.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, next, moving to new business, the executive board elections. As you, in your package, you see the minutes from the nominating committee, and we have 5 nominees in the slate. And so we will take them in order. And so we'll start with the chair, and we have 1 nominee, Davey Tucker. We're going to have to ask you to leave the room.
Get out of here.
Please.
I know. But they just took it up.
Okay, so we have, I guess, he's officially moved by the committee, or, well, Alethia's not here, is she? Because she would normally handle that.
No, but Chuck is willing to represent the committee if necessary.
Okay. Do you want to handle the nominations?
One by one.
Yeah.
The committee recommends Davy Tucker be the chair.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations from the floor? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of Davy Tucker for the chair for the 2021-2022 year? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we can call him back in.
It's like elementary school.
Come on, Chair.
What?
It's like elementary school.
Yeah, well, we have to do it formally. That's what.
They actually can stay.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
oh, we.
I didn't want, I know. We had a former chair who preferred that method.
Oh,
But technically speaking, they're allowed to sit in the conversation, and I believe that they're in fact allowed to vote,
okay,
yes, for themselves.
okay.
But, and I appreciate you, because I will say, we had a former chair who adopted that practice, but is not necessary in the bylaws or in any other rules.
Oh, okay. Well, then, you didn't have to leave, but congratulations, you've been elected. Okay, Chuck? Commissioner Yesbeck?
The nominating committee nominates for first vice chair Miriam Abdul-Fazli. And I personally nominate her if we need to. I move that.
I second.
Okay. Any other nominations from the floor? Seeing none, we have ready to vote. All in favor of Commissioner Abul-Fazli for first vice chair, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Congratulations.
The nominating committee and I personally move that second vice chair Patrick Dash be appointed.
Do we have a second?
I second.
A second. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of Commissioner Dash for second vice chair, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
Someone else have to step up.
The nominating committee and me personally move that for secretary Erwin Venick.
I second, just to sub in here.
Thank
We're
you.
worried how that might go.
Yeah. Any additional nominations from the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of Commissioner Venick for secretary, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations. And then last, go ahead.
For treasurer, the nominating committee and I personally move that Ben Tran be appointed treasurer.
I second.
Okay. Do we have any additional nominations from the floor?
It's not an additional nomination, but just some additional information for this body. Ben had a pre-scheduled out of state. It's July, it happens. And so he sends his apology for missing the meeting, but was honored by the nomination and would serve if elected. So,
Okay, thank you. Did I say any additional nominations from the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of Commissioner Tran for treasurer, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations in absentia. We have a new executive committee. Thank you all five for being your willingness to serve.
There was another point of order from the
Sure.
meeting of the nominating committee, and that was to recognize and acknowledge that Commissioner Marissa Richmond will remain as a ex officio voting member of the executive committee pursuant to Article 7, Section 7A of the bylaws. Do we need to have a motion for that, or is that just a recognition?
No, it's just a recognition of that's the bylaws, and it's just a point of personal privilege, if I might. Chair Richmond, there was certainly conversation among the committee members, a desire to keep you on the executive board for as long as we have you here. And so they were very happy to hear that the bylaws automatically provided for your remaining on the executive board.
Well, I appreciate that. I've enjoyed, although this past year has been crazy because of COVID, it's been a pleasure serving in this role. And for the 9 months I have left in my term, I look forward to continue working with everyone. So I'll say more at the very end of the meeting. Next, we have the community impact of the Delkey plea deal, and I think this is a reference to the NAACP letter, which everybody should have in front of you. And I think everybody's probably familiar with this story, and it's been all over the it's been all over the news, and I know many of us have either said something publicly or on social media, and have. Do you want to say more about this particular letter?
I received this letter just very recently, though I believe that Chair-elect Tucker did have some conversation with President Gwynn, and may be able to give some context to give us a start of the conversation.
Yes, I not only spoke with Cheryl Gwynn, but also the members of their legal redress committee. And what they're contending and what they're asking us here is about conducting hearings as it relates around public safety. They list the police department, the district attorney, and the Metro Nashville budget. But there have been other organizations, and many of us have been talking for quite a while around this issue of public safety. And even in the budget, how you can't police poverty, but we continually try to anyway. And so for many folks, the Delkey verdict was the overall straw that broke the camel's back. And so there have been many community organizations having conversations around what does it take for the Human Relations Commission to just create a space where people can come and talk about their concerns around public safety in a way that is orchestrated that would allow folks to be heard. This is continuing right now. Tonight, the NOAA Criminal Justice Task Force is meeting. They're going to be talking about this very same issue and ways in which we can create an ongoing conversation. There appears to be a disconnect between the city narrative and more specifically the affected people, but I think the overall of just people in general, that there's this one idea of what public safety is over against what has actually happened as the city. Good point is that when the city allocates toward affordable housing the amount they did in respect to the overall budget for everything else, it says what it means. NOAA had a campaign during this budget season where they referred to it as a moral budget. And so the way the city allocates money says certain things. And even if we don't want to acknowledge the things that it says, it becomes pretty obvious. So when you look at what's now outlaw to even talk about the concept of intersectionality or anything. The Metro budget and the Delkey trial, systems like that always self-reconcile each other. So for me, those two things are not desperate from each other. Those two things make up what's wrong. And so the NAACP was moving forward with trying to, or planning to conduct something on their own. And their legal redress committee called me, I spoke with them. I said, well, send us something. And hence is the letter that they've sent. And I guess for me, on a personal level, I find it interesting of the possibility of us to create a public forum for just rank and file folk to come and say and be recorded about how they feel about it. So is that kind of enough to kind of set up a gist of it? Okay.
If I could just add, I also was talking to some council members about the budget issue and how come, because I feel like there's so much activism around the budget, especially this year, there was so much. And I felt like the message was quite clear that mostly everybody wants us to decrease the budget for the police. I mean, in terms of the noise that was out there, maybe not the council members themselves, but the noise from people. But yet the thing got increased and there's an added precinct. And when I talked to a council member about this, she was like, yeah, but that's coming from the community. The desire for the new precinct, the desire for more police officers. And so just to add to what Commissioner Tucker's saying, I think if we did something like that outside of some of the community activism and did it like in a government commission, it could just lend a little bit more heft to, are you sure it's coming from Black and brown communities that they want more police and they want another precinct? And that would be a place to sort of say, because this is what we're hearing. Because it seems like the message is still not being conveyed, or it maybe some of the surveys are heavily, respondents are white or privileged or whatever. So I think that that's a great idea. And if we can really get those people that are affected most by these decisions to come and speak or document or whatever, it would be a separate place, a separate space for that kind of thing. And then, and it would be the same for how MNPD just behaves, recruits, and enacts policy essentially. So yeah, I think that's what I was getting. I was really surprised to hear that one, it's almost untouchable, and two, the demand for more is coming from the very communities that we claim want something else.
Additional thoughts, comments? Yes. Commissioner.
I have a comment and a question. Let me do the question first. So does the Community Oversight Board not do hearings as well? So would we work with them or work in tandem with them or in spite of them? And adjacent to that, if we did hearings, I would want us to be so clear about what our ability to respond is, because when folk come to the seat of power and want to air their grievances, and basically we're re-traumatizing them by making I think it's got to be worth our while, but mainly their while, that they're going to get some sort of satisfaction. So I just don't know the Community Oversight Board. I don't know what their responsibilities, I do know what their responsibilities are. I don't know with regard to hearings, so that would be a question.
I guess for clarity from where I'm coming from, it's bigger than the COB. I brought up to this same body, the COB did a in-depth study of the way in which officers are brought onto the force, and they suggested 11 things that would improve diversity. Well, the chief in the department said no. The COB put out another report 3 weeks ago or so as it relates to discipline of officers, as it relates to offenses. The chief of police said no. So for me, it's bigger than that because it's about the metro budget. It's about housing. It's about all of these things. So I think we're uniquely situated by the charter, I think, to give space for people to come and say, I mean, I think we need to maybe do, contextualize it in a way so that we get people to speak in the same way around what it is. And for me, the larger issue is public safety. And, you know, housing figures into public safety. We don't often see it that way because the narrative is it limits what you think public safety is. So, but I would hope that this body could hear and then catalog, and then even from hearing them and then cataloging it, analyze what people are saying and present a report to the city for them to do with whatever they want. Because, you know, we have sent letters before that went unanswered. You know, so we have exerted effort before that you give it to somebody, and I swear I saw him drop it in the trash can before I even left. So that's kind of my response to that.
We also did this last summer with the recruitment of the MMPD head. Remember, we had these joint town halls for this very reason. Joint town halls with COB.
Okay.
Virtually, on the phone, 5 of them based on topics. Had people call in. What do we think the influence of that was?
But I think the difference is that, like, there's more power when you're in person, right? Like, I think that the virtual element, really, people are zoomed out, people are, you know, like, I just really think that in person could be more beneficial for one. And then I think the other reason why this is important is that we all know, like, you know, when you give people 11 policies, they don't care, but stories really matter. People's, like, you know, that when you're able to humanize and, like, put a face on it, that is what helps all of Nashville sort of visualize what this is actually happening to particular people. So I don't want to undermine the power of that. And I do think that when we did it last year, there was an element of power that was missed just because of the circumstances. We were in a pandemic. There's a gazillion other things going on, you know, in that time, and a little bit of that noise has washed away. And so the voices might be a little bit clearer this time around. So that's my thought on it.
Yeah, if there's anything that we also learned from that process in terms of getting the word out or, you know, making that, I think that would be useful. Because it was valuable and I think you got important, but I just don't know, like, it was almost like we're doing what we're doing. It doesn't really matter what anybody's saying, you know, right?
That's exactly what
That's what happened.
If I may say one more thing, I think I'm very struck by what you said about being told that it's the same communities that are, you know, and I think one of the explanations for that is that we know that 37208 and 37211 are over-policed in terms of the police being an occupying force in those communities. But responding to and guarding public safety in those communities is a different thing. African Americans, I just looked all this up the other day. African Americans are, I want to say it's 3 times more likely to be victims of homicide than any other group in the city. So while in traditional African American communities, there's over-policing, the idea of actually protecting the community from violent crime is a different thing. So that, you know, we may be hearing from people we don't have enough protection or enough public safety emphasis, as Chairperson Tucker said, but at the same time, in terms of misuse of power, that it can also be going on. So I think that's what's going on at the same time, not as a total explanation, but part of it. So.
And if I might add, you know, there has been some very interesting recent research around the impact of gentrification on public safety. right? And so when you're talking about the intersection of housing needs and public safety, I think that that's something that we as a city haven't really talked about yet in any real substantial way. And so I would be interested in being able to thread that through this narrative. And we're very lucky, we have some interns and a fabulous policy and research director who can help us sort of cull some of that recent research and see if we can't also tell a story similar here in Nashville.
So this commission has already adopted and urged the city to adopt an equity lens approach to the distribution of public funds, which plays into this. And I certainly, I mean, to a certain extent, I appreciate the redefinition of what public safety means in a way that can be translated into public policy and to the operation of city government and city programs such as the police department. I think if we're going to take this on, we need to be very, very careful and very deliberate as to how we structure this, so it does not become a complaint session, but it becomes a productive process through which we can provide information to the appropriate city agencies, city council, the mayor's office, such that it does not end up in the trash basket. I think there's a value in giving voice to people to express what their concerns are. I think there's also a value in putting something together that is in fact going to be effective and is going to result in some change in policy. I don't know how to do that, but hopefully we have an executive director and staff that can help us in that regard.
Yeah, I was just going to add, sort of along the same lines. I'm in favor of doing something. As I was looking through Cheryl's letter, one of in the bottom of page 1, she made, it's been normal practice for the DA's office to consult with the family. But I happen to know of another case that I was involved with where the family was not consulted before the plea deal. And the mother of the victim was very upset with the deal. And I don't know if, in both cases, the victim was Black. I don't know if there is a racial disparity there, how much of that we want to get into. But I've been thinking a lot about this case because obviously Officer Delkey was white, but in this other case, the assailant was Black and got 15 years instead of just 3. So, I mean, do we want to look at that sort of level of disparity? I think that there's a real question, a real issue that we want to get into and not just make this assumption that he doesn't, that he always consults with families, and maybe he only consults with certain families. And again, there may be certain types of plea deals that a Black assailant would get various compared to a white assailant. And I don't know how far we want to go with these hearings, how much we want to get into. And of course, as Commissioner Vinnick was just suggesting, we wanted to come up with something that is offering some real positive suggestions and doesn't just become a gripe session. And so that's kind of how I'm looking at this. But I am in favor of doing something. I think something needs to be done. The community is really upset, and we have to address what is clearly a very serious issue here. You were the commissioner. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were gonna.
To reiterate some of the points that I think have been risen that are really important is if we do something thinking about the harm, do no harm, and really, the impact of trauma, that we can, create a safe space. And also really examining what's been done before, what's currently been doing, and maybe even sharing information with us who are new about the ones that just happened that we don't know about, and thinking about historically what the city has done as far as those hearings recently and within this committee. it may be useful to think about some of the truth and reconciliation models that have been, used throughout different countries, not so much here, unfortunately, but, I think those really create safe spaces for people to voice and also respect, and also thinking about the next steps after, which I think is really interesting about what you highlighted, how that can be then turned into the storytelling or policy. Maybe, I don't know what the follow-up was from the previous ones, but those concrete follow-up so that there can be productive action.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Sapti. This is something that we talk about a lot in our office, and I've had sometimes frustrating conversations over the past few years with so much turnover in the mayor's office. That, in the short 6.5 years I have been your director, I've seen lots of opportunity for community to come and, to be heard. And I've seen community really give of themselves. And it's like, how many times do they have to tell us what they want? And so I too would recommend that anything we do should incorporate data and information that has already been collected from the community over the past 5 years. Just to say, look, this isn't new. Things that community is asking for, they have been asking for years. And for perfect example is under the Barry administration, the real dialogue, right? Where we assisted the mayor's office in convening community conversations that included public safety, but a whole lot of other topics as well. And we did one engagement with 100 invited community leaders, and we used a model that us at the commission use in lots of other contexts for having, courageous conversations. It's a reflective, directed dialogue model. And we helped the mayor's office do that. And then we had a bigger one that had, well over 800 people. That's a big engagement from the community. It's hard to imagine being able to replicate that right now, right? Where you get 800 community members to come on a Saturday and give their time and their first-person expertise. And the data analysis from that, I'm not gonna drag you down the rabbit hole, but let me just say that, that your office, did an analysis of the raw data. And the analysis we did was not ultimately adopted by the mayor's office. The mayor's office put out their own analysis, be that as it may. We still have the analysis that we did.
Based on your data?
Yeah.
They took our data and did their own.
It was our data. It was the community data, right? Okay. We had all this raw information, and unsurprisingly, this body was prepared to present that information in a different way than the mayor's office was prepared to present it. Okay? Nonetheless, whatever it was that the mayor's office did is gone. That right. Website's gone, the information's gone. It's like it doesn't exist. And we have it. We have the full analysis. And so I think, any path that you all are gonna go down should include, hey, let's look at the last 5 years, how many times community has come in one way, shape, or form and brought their redress to the government, and it's now in the trash.
Is there anything that precludes us from doing something with that data?
Nothing precludes us, absolutely nothing.
And from that particular incident, I wasn't on the commission at that time, but I was part of the real talks. We actually had to threaten after the meeting that we were not coming back because the mayor's office took the data. And we had to say, hey, you're all by yourself if you don't give us the data back. So, which for me is why I think on the weight of what the charter says the Human Relations Commission is, that we would not have to deal with that. Because as that whole process went along, it kept becoming more and more political. And for me, when I was asked to get involved, my initial response was, I don't want to be a part of a dog and pony show. And after the commission put together the stuff, I think Dr. Hildreth was here then, and oh no, we don't want any of that. No, we don't want any of that. No, we're going to do our own thing about that. And I would not want to waste my time, and definitely not anyone else's, to where even if nothing is done with it, that I think we have the ability to put something together that carries its own weight, because the political acting on it or not does not rest with us. But I do think we can impact what it is people say and the way we capture it.
Would it be out of order to consider establishing a subcommittee to work with staff to come up with some structure to move this forward?
Just before we move, I just wanted to ask a couple questions. I think the main thing was that it was with the mayor's office and whatnot, and this would be our independent initiative, and we would maintain that, I think, with the mayor's office, that you can participate, you can watch, but you can't have or manipulate the situation. I think that was a political Band-Aid, full stop, from the beginning then, from what I understood about it afterwards, along with other things that came out of it, like the workforce development stuff for kids and everything else. I just want to talk about this public safety thing. One of the things that came to mind when I heard about, it's coming from the Black and brown communities, is I was looking for research. There's a ton of cities that defunded, quote unquote, the police, or decreased, and what's the impact so far? It's very early days, right? It's hard to know, but there is stuff out there. So I was interested in, what does it look like when you decrease that budget and where it goes? And we all kind of know it's mental health stuff, it's supporting people experiencing homelessness. There's a lot of different ways that this money. So I think one of those interesting conversations would be, and so I don't like the use of the word productive when talking about consultative meetings, because there's this pressure that, like, you know, you guys are angry people and you have to somehow be very positive and productive for the policymakers to welcome you in. And I'm like, you know, screw the policymakers, like, just speak freely. But I agree that we want this to, so one of the things I was thinking about is really introducing these alternatives in meaningful ways. Like, we have now social workers that wear bulletproof vests and go out. I have a friend that's part of that. I'm very curious whether that's working or not. I'm guessing probably not. But, you know, kind of exploring these alternatives a little bit more in that hearing setting. And then, so discussing and defining peace and public safety, so that it's not like, if they're really just saying, we want to be safe, that doesn't necessarily equal police and precincts. That equals a bunch of other stuff. Right. And here are the 5 things that are working or interesting or that we're being creative about. Mm-hmm. And then, again, our own analysis, separate from the mayor's office. Let's just take the 3 offices that you've been through in the last 5 years away from it and just say, this is the MHRC's whatever. And then also there are a lot of initiatives like the People's Budget, which I volunteered for and watched hearings and took notes for, and they came up with a whole report, and they're organizing people around this issue, obviously. So I think coordinating with all that effort as well, because, or like Driving While Black, there is so much that is already said, all the things. We're just trying to, as a government commission, bring it into another space, I think. But we're not saying that there's anything new that needs to be said or somehow needs another stamp on it. And I think that that's a great way to sort of maybe message it to the community. Like, we know that you've talked, but maybe we can talk more specifically about the alternatives or about how this, whatever, something a little bit more fresh, because we know about Driving While Black, we know about the People's Budget, we know about the assemblies that are going on right now. So those are just some thoughts, but totally into the committee and the subcommittee and whatnot.
Well, just to be clarified, I mean, when I say productive, what I'm really getting at is trying to reach some answers that can be translated into, some policy changes. For example, I mean, one of the big debates in the last budget cycle was whether to go with the police chief's co-response model on mental health response or the HEALS proposal, which is different. Well, as far as I know, nobody's is stepping up to analyze what the police department's co-response process is. Somebody needs to do that who doesn't have a dog in the fight, and that could possibly be us. And I do think that there is an ongoing discussion nationwide about what defunding the police means and how that's reflected or can be reflected in the new concept of public safety. And I think to the extent that we could be helpful in defining that, I think that would really move stuff forward.
There's a Stanford article that was the most recent that I found that has hard research that the law school did on like what is working in that area.
Right.
Yes, and it was very much around very specific things, like people experiencing homelessness should not be attended to by the police, full stop, that should end, and mental health, yeah.
And I guess for me, this is more than just about policing. This is also about, and this is where the stories become important, folk being able to respond in a way that we can take that and from what people say, like just using the police as an example, I've always found it offensive that the MMPD uses scarcity as a community relations tool. When you take sausage and biscuits to kids who don't get breakfast, when you have a food pantry, when you take ice cream, you buy bikes and toys. You're only doing that because it doesn't exist in that area. If those things are needed, the police department doesn't need to do those, because those are the same people who come back to get your mama, your daddy, Uncle Billy, but they're allowed to do that as we're getting close with the community. But that's only because scarcity pre-exists, which to me, we've been policing poverty anyway. So anywhere in the world where you go and you find poverty, anywhere it's empirical, you always have violence and the associated things that go along with violence. Health disparities, poor economic mobility. These are the friends that always ride with poverty. And by and large, our world has chosen the easy way is you police that. Y'all stay over there and let's keep y'all in, and we know you don't have what you need, but you keep your asses over there. Don't come out from over there. And so for me, this is larger than that. It's about how the city allocates its money. It's about talking about what is public safety and from who. Because it's not just African Americans and people of color who are expressing outrage and concern too about what kind of city is Nashville actually is over against what we sell ourselves at. And so so for me, even in the conversations that I've had with Mel and others, it's more than just with black folk. It's with folk in Nashville who say, I want to say something too. So, but no, I like Irvin's idea of us getting together to be able to concretize it a bit more, to come up with just what is this thing going to look like. And I would think we should do this on our own strength, on our own weight as a commission. And, the city and others who are the policymakers, they're always going to make their own decisions on what they're going to do with it anyway.
I see a couple of things. I really appreciate what you said, because what we're talking about is a charity model versus a justice model for how we deal with poverty and the attending thing. So, if we're giving out Christmas baskets, that's a nice thing to do, but that's not transforming the system. And it's not requiring public money and public interest. It's, the goodness of our heart. So people get the dregs, they get the leftovers. And so I think I really appreciate what you said. The other thing is I would be interested in as we pull this together is to look at what are the I'm thinking about your Stanford study. What are the things that are working in building better relationships between police and community, that are not the charity model, that are the mutual respect models, that are, what are, not, like you said, the police shouldn't be giving baskets, but what are those things that are working to build trust and relationship beyond just giving toys out at Christmas? So I think that would be a good thing to look at in those places where defunding the police at some level are happening, because I do, some reading I've done is that there've actually been changes in how police are deployed in the community and what they were required to do to build relationships in the community. I'm ignorant about this in Nashville, but I know in Chicago, my brother-in-law is a retired firefighter, but they just in the last 20 years required again that firefighters and police officers and teachers in the city had to live in the city limits. And I don't know if it's changed now, but that was a big controversy back then, that most of the teachers were driving in from the suburbs and weren't invested in the community at all. And I would say it's the same thing about police officers. It's about who we're recruiting and how we're training people. It sounds like the training is lacking as well, just the basic training for police officers. I know you all been there before, but it's new to me and on this commission, so.
I don't want to, first off, just to put a bow on some of the stuff said, if a police officer is coming to my house and bringing me ice cream, that is not safety to me. That is terrifying in my mind, just as you mentioned that. But yes, absolutely. But I think as we're talking about this and brainstorming about this, I think of, I don't know if anyone has heard of Narrative 4. It's a radical empathy sort of exercise program. But basically what happens is that you get in a circle similar to what we are in. We partner up with somebody. So if Issa and I partnered up, we tell each other a story. And when we come back, I would tell Issa's story to the whole group, but I would say it in first person. My name is Issa, and I basically do it that way. And what ends up happening is that when Issa and I are speaking, I'm actively listening to every word Issa is saying because I don't want to mess up his story when I'm in the circle. And we've seen that Narrative 4 has been taken to Baltimore to do some relationship building between police officers and kids that might be in gangs and things like that, and they've seen a strong decrease in violence. So I think that's sort of the creativity kind of model. It's a really radical shift compared to what the city's doing now. So I just think that we have to push the city to be we have to do something completely drastic because what is happening now is not working. And I think that sometimes we're proposing okay, just move the needle a little bit. And I think that we're all on the same page here that we have to break the needle and figure out another gauge. And so I just want to be very clear that when we're explaining this to other folks that, in order to be, for lack of a better word, productive, we want to understand that we understand that we need to break the needle here, but we can't do it without them or whatever. So I'm kind of just rambling in creative headspace here, but I just wanted to explain those are the kind of solutions that I think we'll really see some big changes to.
I did want to add just quickly that Barbara and I had a brief meeting with Chief Drake this morning, and this was our first opportunity to really sit down with him and say, hey, congratulations, and tell us a little bit about your vision. And we talked some about the mobile diversity seminar, and we call it a mobile diversity seminar, but we do a full day quote unquote training and engagement with the cadets at the police academy, using some empathy conversation models. We're not doing PowerPoint, people talking at you. It's community members engaged in conversation with cadets. And one thing that I don't think we had enough opportunity, time to talk to him about, and I think it sort of feeds right into what you all are interested in looking at is that, you know, the chiefs put together a new office of the community engagement, right? And he's named a chief diversity officer. And I'm still a little unclear as to like what that office, like what really are the goals of that office? What methods are they using to achieve those goals? And
Is that the alternative policing office?
it's not, yeah. So we're gonna keep at it to really try to better understand like what the goal is. What is it that the chief diversity officer for MNPD, what is it that they do? And what methods of community engagement are they using? Because I think there's a prime opportunity to say, you know, that's great, we're so glad that you're committed to community engagement. And, you know, the Human Relations Commission has some expertise in, you know, hearing, you know, what kind of community engagement is meaningful. And so, you know, you all being able to make those recommendations, I think is timely. I'm sorry, can I say one last thing too? It won't be my last thing, you all know me. I will find something else to say too. But I'm just also struck, you know, I've heard from council members as well that some of the quote unquote public safety measures that they're considering are from, being, you know, sought after by Black and brown communities. And one in particular that really, I'm just gonna be frank, that I just didn't really buy was the automatic license plate readers. Okay, and so I'm actually really sad that Commissioner Tran is not here today because he gave a lot of time in the name of the commission in talking to council members, and we attended some of the, you know, some public forums discussing the use of the readers. And one thing the Commissioner Tran and I, like, we eventually found a good message with regard to the, you know, the Black and brown communities want this, was, yeah, we hear you that the Black and brown communities want better public safety. But really show me where they said they want automatic license plate readers as that method, right? You gotta connect the dots.
Yeah, I think that's the issue, is that, yes, I hear that noise of those cars with the engines going across our streets now too, everywhere. It's really disruptive. That's what Joyce Stiles referred to when she met with us. It's like, people are losing it with this like, and the, like, all the violent, like the danger that comes with that kind of racing and the drag racing, which is what she focused on. And what everyone's saying that this came from. And I believe it. I believe everyone's frustrated with drag racing, sure. And it's dangerous and violent and people are scared that their kid's gonna get hit in the street. I believe it. But like, going to that solution is one, I think, driven by a profit motive by some company somewhere that is advising them on this issue. That, oh, it's free because we're setting up a nonprofit that's gonna give it to you, but really that nonprofit is being set up by a for-profit that has longer goals here. And also, that it's taking over the country. Atlanta's doing it, Oakland's doing it, everyone's doing it. So it's like, it's almost encroaching upon us whether we want it or not, like all the people that moved here during the pandemic, right? To your point. So I think that, this is really typical, right? A council member finds a problem and some private entity comes in to provide the solution. Right. And then we had a debate and a discussion with Joyce Stiles. Commissioner Tran was in that. We were all talking about it. We all did our research. And then she kind of was like, oh, and sat back. And then someone else brought it up. And now it's being brought up again, again. And so same thing. And then you see in Twitter and all this stuff, you know, Jamel Gooch says, nobody wants this, and then some council member says, yes, they do, they've asked me for it. And I believe them, I really believe them. Somebody said, this is the solution to your problem, and they said, great. Did they also tell you that they're gonna pull you over, and if you have an expired license, everything's gonna get screwed over for everybody, you know, and all this stuff? So I don't think so. I don't think that awareness raising is happening. And so, bad policies gonna be passed. So I'm down for whatever we wanna do, again, on license plate readers, because this is, I saw a 2-year-old at 1 o'clock in the morning on Broadway, sitting there in her mom's arms because they got pulled over, I think, for something stupid like that. And with these license plate readers, it's gonna get worse and worse and worse. The only other thing I wanted to say is, you were talking about, and I think that's a great point, this is much bigger than just police, and I didn't mean to zoom in, but I also think, you know, there's been great research that's come in the last 5 years about the poverty profit complex and who's making money off of profit. And I'm not saying we would do research on that, but I do think we should keep that in mind, that this is not just about, let's sequester these poor people over here and leave them. I think let's make money off of these poor people over here. I think let's perpetuate, and not that there's some evil person up top, but I'm just saying that there's a system that is part and parcel of that, and there's a private sector involved in that, and we should keep our eye on that money too, if we're gonna really look at this beast.
You keep making me want to say something on the policing thing.
I'm sorry.
You know, police do very little to prevent crime. They spend most of their time responding to it. But you can't tell the police how to police. There's not a mechanism to tell them how to police, so they get to police however they want to. So the license plate readers become the easy way out for them allocating manpower and resources to those spots where the races happen. They happen in the same spots because you gotta need a long stretch and late in the evening. So, but no one wants to take manpower resources and say, let's stop this whole thing. Let's do it this way, and then, oh, by the way, we can also do other things. So, I think unless the public is able to force upon the police department, even the issue with gentrification and not having enough housing, if you can't force it up on them, then they're gonna continue to take the profit way out when they make decisions around it. We were looking at a development over in the north side of town, and the individual said to us, well, we ran the numbers and it just didn't work out. So we took the affordable housing piece out of the project. But they met with the community and sold the community on common use space, affordable housing component. So they got their codes or whatever adjustments done, and now they can't do it because they ran the numbers and it doesn't work. And even by the way that the city is set up, there's not a way to walk back those permissions to build that have already been given. So, I mean, so how do you, unless folk because the government is not structured in that way, so unless folk bear down on them, they're gonna go ahead and build this development that they lied about anyway. Same thing with the police. I don't know, it just reinforces for me that I just think however we can put this together, I think it really has the potential to be a really powerful experience for Nashville. Powerful, I mean, even in inviting policy people, council, mayor's office, chief of police, whatever, to come and hear this. And if they're invited and they don't come, then it's obvious that you did not come because you got invited. That, I just think, like many of you, that there has to be something we can do to keep awareness on it, because the system knows that if you're struggling to keep your lights on, to pay your bills, I showed up the last time and I took off from work and came down there, and now, I gotta take care of my kids. I gotta go, I gotta go do my stuff. Because it didn't do anything the last 3 times I've done it, so I'll just keep right on going.
So, just to move this along, are we going with the subcommittee idea? Because I think it's great. I think we should do it.
Well, I was actually just about to follow up on that point. We just elected a brand-new EC, so why not, instead of appointing a new committee, we have the new EC, so let them sort of take on the task of sort of figuring out how to make these hearings work and sort of what the format is, what the schedule is, what the agenda will be, if we're going to have, I'm assuming multiple hearings, so, do we want to have particular hearings, like we did with you were mentioning the town hall meetings we did last summer on the police and public safety. So do we want to have specific hearings or just generally open it up and maybe let the EC, the brand-new EC, handle that and work out those logistics? That would be my suggestion.
Well, and again, I brought it up, I don't have the particulars, but I would think, hopefully, the bandwidth of all of us coming together to make that look like what it ought to look like. And you kind of passed that over on me, kind of slick like.
No, well, there was a suggestion of having a subcommittee.
I was gonna
and
remind you,
figured
she's first
because,
VC,
to have like all 17 of us, and we're down to like 20 minutes left in this particular meeting, and I have a feeling we could continue talking for another hour before we'd make any decisions. So I thought this might be just one way of as Commissioner Dass said, moving it along. That's just
So,
my suggestion.
and I think that would give us something to do, and, because,
I've really been concerned that you don't have enough to do.
Well, I think I'm gonna take this project here just to, because I'm concerned how it's gonna be over here with, working with her. So we're gonna see how that's gonna go. And this. We're all busy. Most of us in here have various things, and you, just because you're independently wealthy, you're involved in a lot of things also. So.
Let's take it on.
Yeah.
Do you need a motion, or can we just do it?
So, you want to move? Okay.
Give them 2 meetings? Is 2 meetings too long?
I think it may be, but if we can, I think 2 minutes max, but I think if we have a good one.
Next meeting, okay. Let's bring us back recommendations for the next meeting.
Okay. Is there a
I'll
second?
move that.
Great, thank you. Do we need any more discussion on this? Ready to vote?
I do have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm gonna keep saying I'm new until it gets old, but, how are we gonna answer this? Is that may be a separate motion? So maybe we should just go, I answered my own question. Let's move ahead with that, my motion, and then.
Okay.
And I'm happy to communicate with Ms. Gwynn the decision that was made today. And just let her folks know what the path forward is. And I also want to say, even though it's the executive committee or the executive board that will be meeting, that too is a public meeting, right? It's subject to open meetings. So we'll tell them that, we'll invite them to that meeting to participate if they want to. And anybody who's not on the executive committee who is compelled here at this table to participate, even if you're not on the executive board, you too can attend that meeting.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on the motion? Okay. Yes, we got a second here from Commissioner Robinson. Commissioner Yazbek? Okay. Okay, then all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great, motion passes. Okay. Next up on the agenda is the Police Academy Mobile Diversity Seminar. Is that you or Barbara?
It probably may have been able to be part of our director's report, but I did just want to put this on your radar. So we've been doing this full-day engagement with the cadets for just over 5 years. And I do want to publicly thank Barbara for all of the work that she does to put that together. There's a lot of moving parts. In the context of how folk are feeling about policing. So, needless to say, it's a challenge to sort of meet the obligation that we have made to the police academy. They've made this particular training part of their official academy training. It's post-certified. And, I think, at least us in the office, still believe that there is value in doing that engagement, right? We're not gonna solve all of the public safety issues talking to some cadets for one day. But if you're looking at, perhaps in harm reduction models, right? I believe that engagement does more good than harm. But I will say it's caused a lot of heartache for us in the office and for the community members who have volunteered to do this over the years. And we hear them, right? That, yeah, we want to have better relationship with the police. But, we've done this for 5 years, and what do we see from it? And I just I want you all to think about that, particularly as you're thinking out any public hearing that you might do, because, how we engage with the academy and with MNPD generally in assisting them with community engagement. We want to take your lead, okay? And if your lead is the community, right, then I think we can all wrap our arms around it. But, my office and me, we want to hear from you on, how we're gonna best maintain positive and productive relationship with the academy and MNPD while also being the critical friends that we need to be. So it was more like informational than, like, we're not going to answer that question today. Right? And nor could we, because look, our mobile diversity seminar for this class is on Thursday, right? And it's post-certified, it's set up, we're doing it. But as we go forward, I just want us to have some deeper conversation about it.
I'm not understanding sort of what that conversation is. Because I guess what I'm hearing is maybe we shouldn't be doing it anymore. And if that's the message, I have concern about that, because if it wasn't being done, then we would complain about it not being done. So the other side of it is that I have, this may be a product of my, where I sit now, but I think that we continue to need to take the long view that nothing happens overnight. Things take a long time, and you got to keep on keeping on, regardless of how difficult it is.
I've been involved with it from the beginning. This mobile diversity tour was not what was first presented. This is all they would agree to do. And they have a problem having individuals who are non-police teach police officers, which that's a problem. That is the problem. Over time, we had to tell them early on, hey, all the brass doesn't need to come, because when we're sitting around these tables and y'all are skirping around the room looking, and and then I don't know, Barbara, when I get through, I think you might need to chime in. You lived with begging us to come after we get tired of coming. I'm gonna come Thursday, but I hadn't been in a while because it's frustrating. I think some action you can make a reasonable assumption whether or not it will generate some change. This here doesn't. I mean, it's gotten better when you, because I mean, it was like all brass there, lined around the wall, just constantly huddling over them. Then it was even particularly when stuff would happen, everybody's so sensitive, and police, they always want to maintain control. So some things, they need to be talked to by non-police personnel. I mean, you got police teaching you about co-response model. Where do you come down on the side at? You come down on the side of shooting the guy that gets out of the car with 2 butcher knives, hollering and screaming at you. You shoot him. Same way with this mobile diversity tour. Yeah, it's post-certified and all that, but I think if you were to ask others, if you gave me the same amount of time, would you do this with that time or would you do something different? And for most of us who are concerned about change, we probably almost conclusively say, I'd rather work that up a little bit, but.
Frustration is the very word that's over in this space. And part of it is because, thank you. I wasn't trying to be on record, but this is happening. Part of the challenge is we are reminded consistently that the cadets are not police. And one of the reasons why our office has started having this conversation internally is because the reality is the cadets are not police officers yet, but shortly after, they will be sworn with a badge and a gun. And in light of all things post, not just 2020, I mean, it's almost an insult to refer to 2020 and not reference Medgar Evans and others. And so what we are inquiring about and are asking the commission to give us some guidance on how do we have an authentic conversation about the issues regarding law enforcement and the BIPOC communities. How does that happen? Because this needle that we've been trying to thread, right, to understand that you're not cadets yet, but at the same time being real, I mean straight 100, that here is the climate that you are about to enter. And so this has been the challenge. These have been the discussions within our office. And this is the question that we have for the commission. There's some degree of latitude. They've given us some room, some flexibility. The community members, we're about to have our 4th in-person mobile diversity seminar in the middle of what is not a post-pandemic, right? We are still in the midst of a pandemic. And the community members want to have, I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Vinnick, a productive conversation, but the community members also want to have a real conversation, want to have an honest conversation, and it's a both and. It's not an activist experience, but particularly after the Delkey plea, the facilitators are asking me, so Barbara, how do we do this? And so internally in our office, we asked Mel the hard question, and she said, I don't have to answer it because I can ask my bosses. There's 17 of them. And so it's Monday. The conversations are Thursday. And we would just love your insight on not even so much pushing the envelope, but this is the conflict that we're experiencing.
Can I ask? The quick question is just like Barbara and Mel. Little blue dotted line. There we go. Just wanted to ask to Barbara and Mel, for your staff, like how has that been just from like a mental health standpoint for you all doing this over and over again? Because I think that will help determine my opinion and decision on this, because I think that the staff is should be like first and foremost when we're thinking about this as well.
I would say it's been hell, but we're resolved.
Okay. Okay. All right, well, trucking through hell wasn't the most optimistic answer that I was looking for.
Is there a way to, I've never been to one of these things, but like, I mean, it's so clear, the issue, right? Like, it feels like a joke at best and incredibly, maybe demeaning at worst, right? Because it's like, who are we kidding here, right? It's clear to me that this police thing is not about Drake deciding. It's a cultural, top to bottom, toxic and rotten situation. I've read some things that are, I'm sure some other people have seen that there's a lot going on that is pretty gross. So, like, I get it. We're coming in and we're like, so please treat everybody really well and do this to the people that are not like you and bye. And you're just like, who am I kidding right now? You, me, the good Lord above, like, what is going on right now? So, but the fact that we've gotten here, like, so apparently there was a moment where it was like, we need to do this. And then it was, okay, we, police department, agreed to just a slice of it. So these are all developments, right? We need to do this. The people have decided. Then there's a slice. And then we start doing it. We've done 4. And now it's like, what are we doing? This, to me, is some form, as painful it is, progress. Because it's kind of the community, or you all saying, this is a joke. So I'm just wondering, one, is there a moment in the train to be like, can we I guess there's not. You want the real talk and you can't have it. But is there a moment to be like, how much is any of this even able to be implemented? Or how much of any of this is really the problem? Or whatever, I don't know. So that's one idea. And the next one is there another way for us to talk about this?
I want to clarify that from the very beginning of the ask, we've never considered it a joke. We've never considered it a joke, and we, as Commissioner Tucker said, and Mel will tell you, we've gotten called to the principal's office because we did not consider it a joke. What we do feel is that it's insufficient to have these kind of conversations in an hour and a half for each community. So one day is just not enough. Without following back, it's not enough. But now we would prefer to go beyond epidermal. We want to go deeper tissue. Yeah. We want to have even more honest conversations. So it's, I wouldn't say joke, I would say frustrating. Because we see this big, can I say a 3-letter word? We see this big fat ass elephant in the middle of the room. We see it, it's right there. Trunk is up, it stinks, it's making noises. We see the elephant in the middle of the room. And we want to have the I don't know, man, the permission, the green light to address this elephant. The environment. And we don't know if that should come from the commission, if we need to grovel from to the brass.
Can I ask?
I think that's kind of where we are.
Can I ask, have we surveyed the cadets like every year? We have, okay.
Oh, yes.
And what is the, like?
Only cadets.
Yeah, but what's the response? Like, are they saying like, oh, we're learning so much, or is it just?
Well, I've also been involved with it since the beginning. And in particular, the LGBTQ component there's a great deal of hostility towards it. And one of the things we've had to do is alter it a bit to explain to them why this is important. Although, as Barbara was just saying, we only get about 90 minutes for each of the 4 segments that we do each year. We've wanted to expand it, and that's been part of the pushback from the police department, that they have not wanted to expand it. So we take that feedback that we get from the cadets, and we're trying to then go in and try to answer up front those very objections. Here's why this is important. This is why we as a community feel this is important to do. And one of the things we then take back to the rest of the community, why we're doing this. We know we can't solve every problem, and I personally have expressed public frustration over some of this. But I'm committed to doing this, and I think, you know, I'm an historian, so I tend to think long-term. And I know nothing happens overnight. You know, we tend to think in decades or even centuries sometimes when it comes to change. And so, you know, I view this as part of that step. But I get frustrated, you know, because there has been some resistance. We've encouraged them, certainly in their own recruitment, to try to filter out some of that. And I think they can do a better job, just personally speaking.
That's really helpful context, thank you.
Yeah.
And we do a pre-survey and a post-survey, but in all honesty, I think that our metrics, like, we need some help with the metrics, right? And it's not just us. I mean, we've had conversation with folks who do this kind of work in other cities. There's other names for it. I talked to one city, they do what they call a reverse ride-along, right? Where the police have to go ride along with community members, and they heard about what we were doing with the police academy, and so they wanted to learn from us. And the big question every single time is, how do you measure your success? Like, I don't know how we measure the success. Like, I don't know, and I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that. So that's frustrating for us. But I think and I wish Erwin didn't have to leave, but I'm gonna confirm with him, this isn't about us saying we think you should pull the plug. We're saying we want you to double down, right? To say, one day, doesn't cut it anymore. This has to be some core work that happens in your department. You have to make space and time for it. You have to commit some funds to it. And we want to do it with you, right?
And now also, just to add to that, for some reason, MNPD does not want, or has been very reticent about informing the community that this is happening. They do not want the community to know that this mobile diversity seminar exists.
Do they say why? Do they give reasons? Or, I can guess some reasons, but I would love to hear what people say.
My recollection is public pushback. They're concerned about it becoming a distraction, as my recollection from the earlier conversations.
Yeah, I will
Pushback
say
from-
that we haven't heard from Chief Drake on that point, right? So we're also just navigating now, like figuring out, like, how does Drake work and what changes really are happening, if there are changes happening.
This may be a stupid question, but why do we need their permission to do the program?
I don't think it's a stupid question at all, but it's a matter of access.
I thought I read the charter that says we can subpoena anybody we want. Why don't we subpoena the recruits to come for 3 days of training? I mean, can't we do whatever we want to do? Like, what good is power if you're not willing to use it?
So that we do exactly what Chuck just said.
Not to say like, but what, we do have some power, and it seems like we're afraid of exercising. Now, maybe it's smart, because maybe we exercise it, they'll take it away from you. You'll never get to exercise it, but, what's the harm of that? And the other thing that I'd like to say now that I'm actually talking, it's hard to sit silently when you're a lawyer. Somebody mentioned that I'm a lawyer. With the broader testimony that I guess new Commissioner Tucker was talking about, it strikes me that we have a lot of new businesses moving to Nashville, and some of these are really big companies that have all these great aspirational mission statements and everything else. So would it be beneficial to invite or subpoena them to come and say, do you support the equity lens? And are you gonna commit to the equity lens? Like one at a time to build them, or see where they stand. So if they're saying, no, we're not gonna do it, then, we can push back against some projects that they wanna do or whatever, but sort of build consensus from them on a field. Who's gonna say, no, I don't believe in equity? Like, of course they're gonna say, yeah, of course we wanna support that and be behind that. And then, so then when we have these other community programs, it's not just community members who are voicing their thing, it's a $1 to $50 billion business has also said, we're committed to this. And by the way, hey, we're gonna donate this amount to do a pilot project here or whatever. Like to build consensus from people with money. I think one of our problems is budget. Now I know there's a pushback sometimes of having, companies come in and do things, and for a lot of good reasons that talk about a profit motive to keep people poor or whatever. But a lot of these big companies who aren't focused on prisons or making money from poor people specifically do have really grand aspirational mission statements and really robust internal policies of trying to have vendor diversity. And, it seems like with all these people coming, maybe we should make an effort to see where they stand on it and see if we can get some benefit from that.
We could have them come to our meeting, like the way we put other people on the spot. I know when Amazon came, I was working for a nonprofit that got the first grant from Amazon. And they did it strategically and clearly because they were talking to council members and they were talking to legislators and they were like, where should we show that we care about this issue? So we could totally leverage that and exploit it, I think.
Given Commissioner Tucker's point earlier about there being tons of brass lined up all around the walls when you guys are trying to do the training, you all mentioned that you had an opportunity to talk to Chief Drake. Did you have an opportunity to address that issue when you met with him?
Yeah, but that's gotten better over time, hasn't it? Yeah, that's, well, it's less of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's much less of them.
I think, quite honestly, there was some real fear when we first did it. I mean, yeah, they're like, holy moly, like non-police coming in, getting the cadets all day long, and heaven forbid, like all their trainers are black and brown, and some are wearing hijabs and whatever. And I mean, I think there was some fear over what was going to happen, what was going to be said. And, we've done it, and just to clarify, when Barbara says 4 times in person, she means 4 times in person during COVID. Like, we've been doing this since the end of 2015. And so I think, we've built up enough trust and respect, mutual respect, that they're like, okay, you do the curriculum. But now I want to grab that and to grab the moment to say, hey, we showed you that we can do a thing, and we can do it respectfully and authentically. And now you got to let us really do it.
Yeah, do more.
Right.
I
Yes.
hate to say this, but we're already past time. So why don't we kind of, I don't know if there's anything more that we can add. So why don't we go ahead and move on to the director's report? So I know people need to kind of get out of here at some point.
And I invite any individual commissioners who have ideas or want to attend to go ahead, send us an email, and we'll be happy to talk to you more about it and give you the details. And I'm gonna be very short, but there are a couple updates that I think you really do need to know. So, since late May, we have been partnering with PATH, the People's Alliance for Transit, Housing, and Employment on this eviction outreach initiative. PATH has coordinated a whole bunch of volunteers, along with some other grassroots organizations, to participate both in the eviction court watch as well as neighborhood canvassing regarding evictions and the importance of showing up at court, right? Because one of the biggest problems is folks are getting detainer warrants or eviction notices, and they may very well qualify for rent relief, but they don't know they might qualify for rent relief. And if you think you have no hope, then one thing you're gonna do is not go to court. And if you get a default eviction, then you are absolutely not qualified for the rent relief. So having grassroots organizations and advocates on the ground who people trust, to have them say, dude, you gotta go to court, like go to court, has been pretty successful. So I think we've seen an increase in the number of folks who are showing up for their court dates. We've also had really great response from the judges. So we've now seen the judges be more clear in explaining what people's options are and what was going to happen. And we've seen that response because we have court watchers. We have folks in the eviction court every single day now when there are eviction hearings. So the other thing is we are assisting MAC in helping people fill out the applications, connecting people to that resource, because it's a significant resource. It's, 12 months, up to 12 months of back rent relief and 3 months going forward. And so if you qualify for that, that's a significant benefit. And it should be noted that this is unheard of in most government programs, that they don't ask for a social security number. You do not have to be documented. Not a single member of your family needs a social security number in order to otherwise qualify for those, for that rent relief. And then lastly, that's great, and it's $20 million, but those funds are earmarked for only those who are at 80% of area median income and below. So I've had the opportunity to talk to several of you about this, but I just want to take any opportunity I can to say that we are going to see a problem with the 80 to 120% AMI, which that is sort of the category that HUD would call workforce. And so Metro, we're going to have, I don't know, I think it's what, almost $270 million in the ARP funds, the American Rescue Plan. That's gonna come in, and I think that we all need, with one voice, to be very clear that our expectation is that a sizable chunk will go to rent relief and mortgage relief, and to include folks up to 120% of AMI.
Mayor, just to add to that, one little comment is that the other side of that people miss is you have people in that higher AMI that also mortgage their house to buy the house down the street that they rented out. And the person who lives in the house hadn't paid for 12 months. So this is not just a poor person's thing. This is someone who has a good job, they've kept their job, they've done right, but they've got folk in properties as they try to build wealth that nobody's paying. And so, and that sometimes has been missed in all the conversation. It's, if I had another house, you wasn't paying the rent.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that it's hard to find any other situation in which tenants and landlords, their interests are aligned. right? And like, this is one of those rare moments where getting folks who qualify for these funds, get that money to them, is important, not just for the renters, but also for landlords. And while we have had a crazy increase in the number of corporate landlords, that's not everybody, right? Like, there are other people who support their families through rental property.
Can the funds be paid directly to landlords?
Well, in talking with Mac, I'm sorry.
Yes, please, go.
In talking with Mac, yes, they can, but they had not been doing that. That the way the application process was, it allowed the granting organization the latitude to make those decisions. But Metro Action Commission had decided not to do that. But Dr. Kroon promised a couple weeks ago that they are reaching out to the landlord and to the landlord realtor type associations to get that done.
It seems to me that the path court watchers that we have maybe could work that deal to say, you refuse from rent, they'll apply by this date and assign those benefits to you, and the situation goes away.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I will also say, you know, we're also being real clear that, you know, landlords may also use this as an opportunity to evict people for unlawful reasons that they might not have otherwise been able to get away with.
That would out them though,
Right.
wouldn't it? Because what would be the downside to that?
Well,
I mean, if you have the opportunity to get paid from this program and you say, no, I don't want to do that, then it seems quite clear that you're trying to evict them for unlawful reasons, and it seems like the judge in the eviction court would take that under advisement too.
yeah. No, I think that's right. And I think that's precisely why it's a good idea to try to catch folks before they go into court to figure out, do you qualify for anything? And do you know about the legacy diversionary, the eviction diversion court that Judge Bell has set up? Because people don't know. They have no idea what their options are. And I'm going to admit, I'm really frustrated that what it has taken to really get people the information they need is not the government who has the $20 million, right? But the grassroots organizations who care about those folks. And, you know, I mean, heck, we spent, you know, $6,500 of our tiny budget to support this work because we, you know, agree that this is a real crisis. And we need to be all hands on deck. But at this point, a lot of landlords are also just frustrated because it's taken so long to get this money to them. That some landlords are now to the point where they're like, I'm just gonna cut my losses. Like, I don't have any evidence that this money is actually gonna come.
And they also have to sign a 90-day, I won't evict the person if they receive the funds.
All right, the last thing I have a couple other things, but I'm just gonna say one other thing. Before the end of the month, we should be able to have a robust research and policy recommendation advocating for the fully inclusive insurance coverage for Metro's transgender employees and pensioners. We're gonna have the whole package. I think we're gonna have it put together by the end of the month. And then we'll be able to take that to the benefits board along with some of the impacted employees in order to request that change.
Okay, does anybody have any final announcements? Seeing none, I'll just say, again, it's been a pleasure being chair this past year. Appreciate everybody's patience and tolerance when we were having all those WebEx issues, but I look forward to at least turning over the gavel to our brand new chair, and And I look forward for my last 9 months on the commission before I have to roll off because of term limits. But it's been a pleasure working with you all and especially as chair and just thank you for this opportunity. Commissioner Dash?
I do have one announcement. It's just, Turk is doing this thing called Food Truck Fridays. If you're free on a Friday this month and you want to check out a new immigrant-owned food truck, come find me after the meeting and I can tell you more. So didn't really want to do the Food Truck Friday thing after that, but it's a celebration of Chair Richmond's term or whatever. We'll look at it that way.
Thank you. Thank
Chair
you.
Richmond, I just want to say I've enjoyed being on the commission with you. You solidified your place with me. You probably don't remember when the shaming incident happened with the police department. And the way you handled that showed me that you were really seeking justice and not revenge. Because I initially rode with you to get revenge, but it was listening to you as we went through those meetings over in the mayor's office, you were looking for something else. And never had the opportunity to say that to you, but I want to say it now when I went with you so we could get them and you just wanted to change stuff. I appreciate you and I appreciate everything you've done.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Anything else? Any more food announcements?
If anyone wants to attend the MDS this Thursday at the Training Academy, 2715 Tucker.
What time do we start?
Ooh, have mercy. So breakfast is at 7, it goes from 7 to 4. Chair still, Richmond will be facilitating the conversation regarding the LGBTQ community. What time is that conversation? 12:10. You know what?
You probably sent me a schedule. I have to know. I got to find it.
We can make this so easy. I'll just send a schedule.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
People do that all the time.
Okay. Any last announcements? Accept a motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's opposed.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.